Okay, thank you for joining us again with Unmasked and Air. Sorry about the break. PJ, are your legs okay?
Derek, you have to go into our Facebook cover photo and give my little man an eye patch.
I think you're gonna be okay. We took care of the ducks. The robot cyborg ducks they're all dead. They're all dead. Dylan, you had something that you wanted to talk about nerd culture do's and don'ts, right?
Yeah.
What?
I'm very glad that you caught your breath that fast, Dylan.
Right. So, likes, dislikes of nerd culture and your personal do's or don'ts if you are in a creative part of the nerd culture. What don't you like people doing?
Okay.
What do you like? And what do you prefer artists and writers do or not do?
Yeah, that's a fair question.
We'll start with you, Patrick.
Okay. I think my biggest negative in the world of nerdy stuff that we're living in currently, I think the biggest thing that draws me away from it all is our voices get heard a lot. Not ours specifically, because we hope they do, but our voices specifically as a culture and the fans of the content we're receiving, we get heard a lot more than we used to when we don't like things. Like Henry Cavill's CGI mustache is an example of them doing something and everyone going, this is ridiculous. And we have a lot to thank Ryan Reynolds for, because Ryan Reynolds at this point breeds in his Deadpool franchise a way that this stuff can make fun of itself, which is something that's, relatively new.
Right.
But the problem becomes when those voices are too loud and change the source material for the worse.
Okay.
And I know we bag on Brian Michael Bendis on this show because he makes choices that almost seem to dig into the classics that we love so much, almost on purpose, like to get a rise out of old fans and attract new fans.
Right.
And I think a lot of that comes from things like, and it is a touchy subject with a lot of this stuff, like when it comes to, what sex specific superheroes are, what race specific superheroes are, because these things were created primarily in the 50s, 60s, 70s. A lot of superheroes in general are white guys. And you see a lot of, when you pass like the 70s mark, you see a lot of black men, and you have black men and white men and a few women here and there. And now we live in a comic and movie area where there's a lot of diversity, and that's great. But the problem becomes when somebody creates something and that backlash changes what the source content used to be.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with diversity. I don't think anybody on earth would say there is.
No, certainly.
But there is a problem when you, for the sake of, I feel, selling more books, change things that from like Spider-Man came out in 1962, and then when they did Spider-Man so well, they're like, okay, well, this Spider-Man is Pete. You get to love your old classic Peter Parker. And then this one is Miles Morales. And he comes from a different walk of life. And it's how he'd handle it. That's great.
Yeah.
It's one thing to do that. It's another thing to go, all right, Bruce Banner's dead. Fuck him. He's dead.
Right.
Because we want to diversify. People love diversity, and that's a good thing. But we're going to hand fist it down people's throats because that's what sells books.
Well, and I think that, like, X-23 is my example. Wolverine was gone for a long time in comics, and you got what you got in his place was X-23. And it's not even so much my problem being that they made the Wolverine a female. It's that they did not set up a good backstory at all. And so when I read Wolverine and I read him really struggling and he's in his pain and he's trying to, figure out who he is, for example, you feel for him, even though he's like ruthless and killing. When she was ruthless and killing, I didn't feel for any of it. She's a clone. It doesn't matter. She has no backstory. There's nothing. Why do I care?
Yeah, and I feel like nowadays with X-23, as that example, that's gotten better.
Sure, because they finally wrote something for her.
But the first go-around, it's like when Ben Reilly took over for Peter Parker in their, like, the Clone series.
Yeah.
It's like, who gives a shit?
Well,
Ben Reilly has Peter's memories and he's sad because of that, but that's not something you can
It seems like
identify with.
X-23 could have easily been written to be a character that held her own, and yet they wanted the title of Wolverine just to push her over the edge into fandom, and it doesn't work
Right.
like that.
Now, but my negative leads into my positive.
Sure.
Which is primarily that because we are so easily reachable,
Sure.
and they are so easy to reach. Like, creators and consumers are in contact with each other, that you get a lot of things like Netflix's Daredevil,
Yeah.
which is a series I feel that was born because Netflix, the way they handle their stuff seems to be they approve a pilot or a script or a premise with a cast and go, all right, you're good. You have this X amount of days to film. We're paying for this lot. Go have fun. And, they have executives. Of course they have executives, but they don't shoehorn their own, this is what we're doing. We are doing this way. You better figure it out like this. They let their creators do what they want. And it's because the guys who run the Netflix branch, like their own, original content branch,
Right.
those people are just nerds.
Yeah.
They want to see, apparently the CEO of Netflix is just a big nerdy guy who pays and funds things like Black Mirror and Stranger Things and Daredevil and all the Marvel stuff. He just funds things that he wants to watch.
Right.
And those relationships are forming because we live in a world where we're easy to talk to. Like when you look at the Edge of the Spider-Verse movie, and you have Miles Morales. Miles Morales was born from fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's great.
truly.
I love Miles. I think Miles is such a refreshing take on Spider-Man because it really brings you back to that I'm a kid. But it's also, and as a white guy, I could never have guessed that because you don't think about it. But Miles' story tells a lot about he's a black kid having to deal with being a superhero.
Right.
And that's different. And it's different in a good way, storytelling wise. And that happened because fans wanted it and they asked for it. So it's a bad thing when you do it to please fans that are uproarious and angry for the sake of being angry. But it's a good thing when you make content and you make, positive changes because your fans, what they want. You know what your fan base wants because they tell you, they communicate.
Right.
I love that. I love this relationship that develops. But again, and I think that's my point, is there's a thin line between healthy and overbearing.
Right. I think that's a big difference between the two big camps of comics. I think DC handles that a lot better over the course of history than Marvel has. DC, think about Green Lantern. Green Lantern, we had did we have one or two before Hal?
Just the one, just Alan Scott.
Alan
and then
Scott
Hal
was
Jordan.
Gold Silver Age, or Gold Age really, and then Hal Jordan was created and he ran for a long time.
Yeah.
And then whenever they finally were like, hey, we're gonna do something different, the discussion came up of okay, well, here's this character. And it was basically just another he's blonde this time. And instead, Neil Adams was the one who went, no, here's the new Green Lantern character. And he gave them Jon Stewart.
Yeah.
And it was he's completely different than what Hal is. And it's from a different direction completely. And then, that is honestly the Green Lantern that most of our generation grew up with.
I grew up with Jon Stewart.
Yeah, because he was in all the cartoons and all the animated
Right.
stuff.
And it's not just the contrast of, it's not just the contrast of a white guy versus a black guy.
No, for sure.
A lot of the contrast of Hal is a pilot and he's rogue and he goes crazy. But Jon Stewart is military.
Yeah.
He's to the letter. He's a sniper. And that's just when you make these changes the way Neil did with John, or when you look at Mr. Terrific is a good example. Mr. Of DC handling creating a wealth of diversity. Well, no, you know who's a better example than Mr. Terrific? Duke the Signal.
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Batman's new sidekick.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne is under the assumption dead. Batman's dead. Jim Gordon takes over. He gets a new Robin that had this terrible thing happen to him, and he's this black kid named Duke Thomas. Duke Thomas is fucking cool. Duke Thomas is more collected than is more calm and collected than the other Robins.
True.
I mean, when you look at I don't know if any of you have read I Am Suicide.
Yeah.
Which is great. And it's a rebirth story where Bane is coming to Gotham to basically eliminate Batman and everyone he knows. Like from Catwoman to Alfred to Tim Drake they're all on the list. And Duke is like, Batman told us to stay out of his way. I'm staying out of his way. And all the Robins are laughing like, no, dude, that's fine. We're just going to go beat up the bad guy. This is how it works. And Duke's like, but he seems fucked up. I'm not going to do this like normal. I'm going to handle this better. I love Duke.
Yes.
I think the Signal is a cool fucking hero. I think his costume is cool. I think the naming convention is cool.
Yep.
But like most importantly, they took a character who is a black teenager. They gave that spin to it and they made him real and believable and tangible. And I think they handle it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And, that's a good example of we've had other people pick up the mantle. We've had, of Batman, we've had other Robins throughout the years. And yes, the grand majority of them are white kids.
Yeah.
White male kids. But we've had a couple female Robins in there who have now gone on to either be... he's got a whole Bat family at this point in Rebirth where he's got Orphan and he's got Batwoman is running a whole team of people in Detective Comics and has been for I don't know what are we 40 issues in.
Huntress.
Yeah.
Huntress is out there.
She's really big.
Clayface, they've completely turned around to like better him as a character.
Red Hood and the Outlaws as an independent thing will show up to help.
Yeah.
It's like everybody has grown and changed and they fit their own niche.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to do that by killing off every Robin to then create a new Robin.
Well, they also, I feel like the major difference between the two is that if we're going to draw the comparison, is that DC does it because it's what the fans want in the positive way that you were saying. So they think about the best way to approach something without robbing us of the things that we like about it, but simply growing and adding to. Marvel seems to listen to everybody's complaints, and the louder they are, the more Marvel pays attention. And rather than trying to write a good reason, they shoehorn or kill off, and that's it.
It's because I think it has a lot to do with them viewing the source material being, again, white male heroes as instead of the source material at the time and looking at like Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, Bob Kane, all these original writers of this source material. I think they look at that and go, that's something that we need to be like not proud of. We need to push that to the wayside so that we can bring in a new era. And it's like those things can coexist. They can co-inhabit the same universe.
Absolutely.
Right, because at the same time that, yes, the grand majority of those early characters from Marvel are white men, Marvel is also the company that came out with, as far as I'm aware, like the first big name African hero and African American hero in Falcon.
Yeah.
Well,
you know what else they did though?
Black Panther's the
right.
If you didn't gather that,
no, sure. They also, the whole point of the X-Men is to talk about diversity.
Yeah,
that is the entire reason that the X-Men exist, is a big allegory for diversity.
Yeah.
And they've talked, I've heard Stan Lee in interviews plenty of times say a lot of the reasons my characters had to look the way they did is because they wouldn't let me put them in books if they looked different. But clearly that's the way I felt because I wrote about diversity.
Well, X-Men, Stan Lee has been quoted that the X-Men was at the time, and it always anything can represent anything if you write it from the heart in that way. But I think I remember hearing that it was originally about like gay equality, like that they were viewed as outcasts, and I think that's why Ian McKellen showed so much interest for Magneto, is because that's what he identified from the X-Men books. And I believe that. I'm not 100, but something Dylan and I have talked about, speaking of Marvel and speaking of a good way to handle, keeping source material, but building that slew of much needed diversity. Spider-Man. One of our conversations, Dylan and I, was Spider-Man 2099,
Mm-hmm.
who is a Hispanic superhero, and Dylan. Clearly, he identified, and he and I think Spider-Man 2099 is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's not to like? He has fucking jetpacks. He's awesome. He has the hooks on his fingers.
He's like Batman Begins, but Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly
Which is
right.
fine.
Yeah, and so and they don't ruin a character. They don't kill a character to make a character. They went, well, in the future, this kid Miguel is Spider-Man.
Well, it's
I
just,
like that.
Just like you said about Batman Beyond. I don't care if you're writing a different Batman. If you're going, okay, well, now Batman's too old. It's going to happen eventually. Here's a new story. Cool.
They gave you a good reason.
I didn't mean to blow the lid on the morals of comic book companies, but that's my negative and my positive all in one brush.
That's cool. No, that's
Yeah,
really cool.
Yeah. Also, Dylan, how fucking cool is Spider-Man 2099?
I did. How about you, Derek? What are your likes and dislikes of nerd culture?
Okay. Well, funny enough, I think that mine kind of are a similar thing of like my positive and my negative walk a line together, where I really love whenever you're a fan of something and you love it. It's something that you care deeply about. I mean, to be a fan of something, fan is it means fanatic. It means that you care a great deal about something. You're crazy about it. And so to be a fan of something, I'm a fan of Star Wars, I'm a fan of Batman, I'm a fan of Hellboy.
Alien.
Yeah, put a xenomorph in something,
Sci-fi.
I'm there.
Halo.
Halo. But so whenever I'm out and about, let's say, and something is mentioned or it's brought up or you run into somebody in a comic shop, at a convention, just out in your life, and they also share that thing. To be a fan of something is, I feel, a very personal thing. You find a niche of something that you like, and you like it for whatever reason, and sometimes it's just you. I like the band Coheed and Cambria.
Yeah.
And they're not a band that like everybody out there knows. They have a very particular set of fans out there, like a very set kind of music and storyline, because it's progressive rock and it's all sci-fi story for the most part. And just that name, Coheed and Cambria, is like, well, that's a weird, I don't know what that is. I don't know who that is. But when you run into somebody who knows who that is, you're like immediately friends with that person. You're like, you get it.
Well, it's like your friend John
Yeah.
is big into that band, and that's you guys' thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just that whenever you run into those people. So I love it when that moment happens and you're like, this is my thing. And then somebody else talks about it and you're like, oh, we have something in common.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Or, hey man, I just want to say I love them as well. The negative on the flip side of that coin is I hate, like, my least favorite thing about nerddom is what people, the bastardization of the word fanboy or fangirl that has happened.
Sure.
Which is it's that person who every facet of their life now bleeds that thing.
Right.
Whether it be Harry Potter, Doctor Who, Supernatural, what have you. Where it's like every single thing you tie back to, oh, well, I'm just like that because I'm a Hufflepuff.
Right.
It's like identifying in a way that it's like it's real to you. And that's great, but I live in the real world.
well, no, for sure. And
So it's that thing of when, I guess the example, the reason it walks that line is that I'm the type of person, like, if I walk into a shop and I'm looking at a set of books, I was in a shop yesterday and there were a couple Preacher books that they had in plastic, like, high-end original printings of like Preacher number 13 and 15. And I asked about them, and the shop owner, who was not the guy behind the counter, but just somebody kind of hanging out in the store, was like, Preacher's my favorite book, my favorite comic book of all time. And I went, yeah. he was like, yeah, I mean, I read him from the beginning because, I mean, he's a great deal older than
Right.
us, but it was just that thing of like, yeah, I only read Preacher last year, and it's 66 issues, could not put it down. And it is probably my favorite complete comic book storyline that I've ever read. And so it was just, that's a cool thing. And then he and I could sit there and I was like, well, have you watched the show? And he's like, I've tried to watch the show. Here's my things that I like about it. Here's the things that I don't. I'm going to give it another shot. And then that led us into talking about the difference between how Preacher was handled and how Walking Dead was handled. Another comic series that I love and the show that I go back and forth on.
And I think your point stems to, like, you guys can talk about Preacher, but then if you went, well, like Preacher, what do you think about Walking Dead? He wouldn't go, yeah, that's cool. Let's keep talking about, like,
yes,
it's not,
yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, you can talk about Harry Potter, because I think everybody's here read all 7 books, seen all 7 movies, well, 8 movies.
Yeah.
I can talk about Harry Potter because I liked Harry Potter. I liked it,
was
when
good.
Came out.
Yeah.
I read it when they came out. I can also then talk about something different and not go, no. I'm a Slytherin. I only talk about Harry Potter. It's like,
Right.
you should relax.
Or if I'm working somewhere, if I'm doing something in life,
Right.
and someone in the room that if I'm in Walmart, and you're walking around, and then 2 aisles over, you hear somebody say the word Doctor Who, you don't immediately drop the item in your hands, and your ears perk up, and you go, someone's talking about Doctor Who. I need to go also talk to them about that.
Right. I think
That's the difference. That's the line.
So one time I worked at this Mediterranean restaurant as a waiter for a while.
Right.
And I worked with a girl who, honest to God, adopted, I should say, the Skyrim gods as the things that she spoke to and prayed to.
Okay.
Right. like called them by name when she dropped a plate and stuff, and was like, I just love Skyrim so much. And it's like, that what do you mean? That's why are you 5 like bearded dudes in a room wrote those gods and made them like they're not what? Like, it was crazy. And I'm all about, like, if you're going to make a joke or you want to make a reference or like you're doing something kind of funny, I think they take it to a fanatic extreme that is, and normally I wouldn't even care because like you do you, and if I can't talk to you about anything but Doctor Who or your Harry Potter obsession or whatever, fine. Like if that, then I probably won't hang out with you a whole lot.
Right. We don't have as much in common.
You do you. I think the big issue becomes when it starts to affect the source material, which I think it really does.
Yes.
Quite a bit.
Yes. Whenever everything becomes like very fan servicey.
Yeah, well, and it's the difference in like the old school Doctor Who was. I mean, I've seen most of Doctor Who, to be honest. I've seen most of the old Doctors and stuff. The first time they ever did like a special where they crossed a bunch of them back together,
Right.
It was because there were 4 of them, and the show was like freaking 20 years old, and so they're like 15 years old or something like that. And they put them all together. Like, it had been a long time. I'm trying to think. If it was 3 Doctors, it would have been like between, I'm gonna say probably 5 to 7 years. After that, Tom Baker did it for like 6 or 7 himself.
Yeah, he went for a long time.
So when they had all of them together for this special, they were like, it was so long. The first one I believe had passed away, and they had to like use old footage of him and stuff.
Possibly. And you know what they've done recently? I don't know if you're caught up, and I'm not
crazy.
I don't
caught up
watch
now.
it, but I know enough just from the internet and from people
Sure.
in my life that do love Doctor Who. The thing that I find really cool about this particular example,
Right.
is they just did a recent special with Capaldi,
Yeah.
and they brought back the first Doctor.
Did they use old
But the
footage?
way that they did it is they actually recast. It's the actor who plays Filch from Harry Potter.
Oh, that's awesome.
and he looks
Just like him.
spot
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's a great way to do it.
But that's kind of my point. Is like the first time they did it, they waited for a long time. There was like
Yeah.
a good reason, and it's like, this is neat. It's been lasted forever. Let's do this really cool. Now they've done a special pretty much. They've done a Christmas special. They've done a like everybody, and all the fans keep calling for like a Sherlock crossover Doctor Who special, and it's like,
yeah, that's where it's weird.
right. It's like, guys, just because it's on the same network doesn't mean, or like just because you both like it, those two things doesn't mean it has to happen.
Which, not to tie that directly back into what I was saying, but if the creators go, you know what would be cool? Yeah, Let's put Sherlock with Doctor Who. That's an example of a bad relationship.
It's the rumor. I don't know if it's actually happening, but in okay, so the Men in Black series has had 3 films so far. And I think with the third one, it's pretty much kind of been put to bed. Like,
well, yeah, the third one was god-awful.
You wrapped it up, and you told your story, and, like, you didn't...
It was bad.
The law of diminishing returns.
Right.
And then you have the 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street films, which have done bank.
Right.
Like, people love those movies. Mm-hmm. They are some of the funniest movies that have come out in the last decade, probably. And just because of how, like, Marvel is got this universe and, like, DC has got this film universe and they're trying to build all these universes, the company who owns those 2 franchises are thinking about doing a crossover movie between Men in Black and 21 Jump Street.
Which
and
is
it's
ridiculous.
like, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, they don't jive.
Right.
You know what my point is? I think that if they wanted, right, let's say the writers of Sherlock were like, we would really love to do just a fancy little Christmas thing. It won't even be canon, or maybe it will, but it will be just a throwaway. We want Doctor Who. Like, what an honor that would be. Because Simpsons write cameos in and stuff all the time.
Right.
Wouldn't that be neat? A little nod, or even a full-blown episode, like whatever. If it was their idea, there would be a certain amount of passion behind that, and they would write it well because they want to make this thing work. I feel like there comes a point when, the fans want this, and it's shoehorned. Same thing with X-23 that we were just, it keeps coming back, this conversation keeps steering back to the downside of the fandoms is exactly that. There's no passion. It's just either it's a moneymaker or it's a views maker, because a lot of it has to do with fucking ratings and how can we stay on. Supernatural is my big one on that. Supernatural is because they wrapped it up, it was perfect, they finished it. Then they wrapped it up again, and it was perfect, and they finished it again. And they've wrapped it up a third time, and, like, how many seasons do...
We're on, like, 13
They
or something?
stopped the apocalypse, and that was supposed to be the end. Now they're still going. Because the fans love it, more money, and more ratings. And it's just, like, I don't think it's art anymore. You're not telling a story, you're just doing it to keep it alive.
They've become a parody of themselves.
Yes.
And so before we get... I can see you're getting a little heated, Calvin.
It's fine.
So, how would you sum that up real quick?
I love being a fan of things. I love being I love being a part of nerd culture, and I love having those things that I feel special about and finding someone who also likes that thing to where we can have that moment and then hopefully find other nerdy things that we all love. But there comes a place where it is insanity. Mm-hmm. It is too much. Just because I like Star Wars doesn't mean that I need to purchase everything that says the word Star and Wars on it.
Or tell people that you're a Jedi or a Sith and then
Like,
blame
I
your
believe
own
in the
actions
wills.
on that.
Right.
Yeah, I can totally get behind that. How about you, Calvin?
So
Your likes and dislikes,
sorry.
not like exactly what I was saying.
Right,
Not
no,
come-
I know. I'm trying to. That's just you touched a nerve with that.
Oh, I
man.
get that.
It's- ugh. Okay. So my first positive, I think, about nerddom is what an incredibly interesting thing it is that I can meet people that would otherwise probably never have a relationship with me. Whether it just be, that guy. I mean, the example that I'll give is one of my friends at work is somebody that I probably never would have talked to. He's a kind of preppy dude. We don't go to lunch together or anything. He's got a whole circle of friends, and we just don't really. I don't even want to say we don't jive because there's no reason. It's just we as humans like similarity before we try to connect with somebody, and we would never have talked. And it was like the 4th day. And I was at work, and I dress pretty weird, and I'm just a pretty strange dude. And
now, are you a pretty strange dude, or are you a pretty strange dude?
Yes. And we were in the break room, and I mentioned to a different friend, he was just standing there back there. My only friend at work was like the 3rd, 4th day. I said, man, I just finished Last Kingdom, and it's so good. And this dude behind me was like, bro, isn't Uhtred just the coolest character ever? And I turned around and I was like, wait, you're talking about Last Kingdom? And he was like, yeah, that show blew my mind. I just finished it like a month ago. I've seen it twice. Like, I watched both seasons, and we talked for probably an hour and a half. Now, the thing of it is this guy actually sat next to me for like the first 90 or so days that I worked there. Sat next to me. We hadn't talked in like 5-6 days. We've just been in silence. Now we're really good friends, and we hang out. And like, he'll go with PJ and I to lunch sometimes. And like, it's just really cool. You know, what a neat thing that brings people together.
Yeah.
I've got plenty of friends that I've met just because we're talking about the love of whatever it is that we're talking about.
Right.
That I wouldn't have probably ever connected with other than that. Some of the coolest experiences we've had are because, like MegaCon, part of MegaCon's awesome is I am in a room with probably 25,000 people that share my level of enthusiasm and love about something in this room.
San Diego.
Right. It's just the most amazing thing that we walked into MegaCon, and how many Star Wars cosplays did we see? And it's like, oh, dude, I love that.
Yeah.
And you don't really think about it because, of course, they're all there. It's a convention. But, like, we have a spot, and on this day, we all came here to celebrate that we're dorks.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Like, you walk in there and you don't immediately feel out of place.
No, in fact, it's quite the opposite.
Right.
It like, the more I see cosplays and everybody with, you know, cool ass backpacks that are Batman or whatever, and it's like, oh, I love that, I love this, oh man, and then you meet all these people. Like, I know that you and I have kept in contact with a few people that we met cosplaying at the convention.
I have pretty well everyone that we met and interviewed at MegaCon, I have on my Facebook right now.
Right, and it's like, I mean, we've talked, and it's a really neat thing.
That guy Yusuf.
Yeah, Yusuf
that we
Tassa.
met at
That's
MegaCon.
awesome.
He's like Boca Raton, Miami based,
Uh-huh.
and I would never have met him in my life. But he had a fucking cool big ass boss, big. I think that's a Freudian. So yeah, big balls, big boss cosplay.
Yeah.
And it was from Phantom Pains,
Yeah.
it was Venom Snake, and he had the horn sticking out of his head,
Metal hand.
and the red metal hand, and how did you make this? This is so cool. What, I love this fucking game.
Yeah.
And that's, I would never,
It's just-
never met that
It's just
guy.
so cool because I think I took it for granted for a long time, but when you walk in there, as long as you're not with those nerds that are all freaking out about which house everybody's in Harry Potter world, most of it's pretty cool. Most of it is really just, it's a really kind of a miraculous thing.
Not to mention, a con is the place to do that.
Right.
But in everyday life, I don't think that's... It doesn't have to be to that extreme.
Right. No, I agree.
I identify with both of those points so hardcore because I've done that thing where it's like, like today, the part one of this episode with the icebreaker that we had. It's like, I identify with, wanting to be a hero. And this is the perfect setting to talk about that because we're in a podcast literally talking about that. I don't mean to get too meta, but then I've also had people go, sorry, that's just the way I am. I'm just like a Winchester. And it's like, you're not. You are not like that. Please back away from me.
You don't.
Is that a Game of Thrones?
No, Winchester. Wow.
You guys want to talk about Lost?
Yes. So I think that's really cool. I just think it's a really neat kind of come together thing. Now, one of the negatives that I have, the only kind of negative that I have about it comes also from the MegaCon and these convention things, and it has to do with the same point I keep making over and over. If what you love and what you're doing comes from a place of passion, I really appreciate it, right? If what you're doing comes from the love of money or fame, it is no longer interesting to me.
Yeah.
And my biggest case in point is convention costumes and cosplay. There are people that I have met at these conventions that are celebrities because they are Darth Vader. We met Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. Like, those people I want to meet and I think deserve to sit behind a booth, and you should want to meet them if that's your fandom. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've earned that respect and the right to be
absolutely.
a guest. They have something to bring to us. They can, they run panels and you can hear about their experiences. Cosplay is a really fun and amazing thing, and I'm going to get to my positive about it, but the one downside I think I have with the idea of cosplay is the The fact that you can, if you are an attractive person, like conventionally attractive individual, really kind of half-ass a costume as long as you show enough skin, and eventually you'll get a huge following, and because you have 50,000 people on Instagram, you're a guest at a convention. And it's like, okay, but what did you do to deserve people? Not even to deserve. What have you done that I will take away from a panel about you talking about how you cut up a t-shirt and you were Laura Croft? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
And I don't want to not cosplay. Even if you're cosplaying a character whose costuming isn't some ornate and incredible thing. If you're doing it because you really care, awesome. But my prime example is that I was at MegaCon, and there was an entire list of panelists, I guess is what you would call them. And some of them were the typical celebrities where I'm going to go, and even if I only talk to them for 30 seconds, I'm going to get an experience out of it.
Right.
And then when they were doing their panels, you're listening to these people talk about these vast experiences and their qualifications for having these opinions. And one of them was a costuming panel. And the panel was not led by costumers in Hollywood. And the panel was not led by costumers of a stage show. The panel wasn't even led by, 20-year cosplay veterans who have built this incredible, 501st accurate Darth Vader. It was literally just two cosplayers who had started a year and a half before. If you went to their social media, they were brand new out the gate. They were both incredibly attractive with the right hourglass measurements, who everybody, I feel, probably followed them because they showed enough skin on Instagram. And then the panel itself was really terrible because it wasn't about costuming. It was about, oh, look how great this is. And it was basically a glorified fashion show. And I'm like,
how to get followers.
Exactly.
And how to boost your
and how to
social
get paid.
media.
And how to get paid and how to
Right,
make money.
right.
The fact that some of these people have Patreons that pay their salaries when they're not even in undergarments they've purchased at Walmart. I'm like, good for you. That's cool. I don't think that makes you a nerd. I don't think that's part of our culture. In fact, I think it's really kind of counter to our culture because being a nerd, I'm not saying you have to be an outcast and wear that like a badge of honor. I'm not. It should be all inclusive. But I think there does come a certain point when it feels very advantage takey.
Right.
It feels very fake and forced. And I don't believe you if you tell me, oh, I have a passion for these characters, and that's why I dressed up like one of the Pokemon, and I'm Pikachu, but I'm wearing a yellow tank top and nothing underneath it, and it sure is cold in here, boys. Give me your money. I don't really think that you honestly like that show. I don't believe you. And if you do, there's got to be a cooler and more creative way to do that.
Right.
And stop asking me for money until you do something that's valuable to me. That's the other one that blows my mind about that is you should give me money so I can send you this calendar of me half naked. And it's I would rather spend my money, and this is my positive, is that nerddom inspires some of the most creative and impressive shit I've ever seen.
Right.
Yeah.
I would rather go to Etsy and find a guy who made a custom black mask helmet with his 3D printer, sanded it and painted the whole thing. I will give you $200 for that. That's dope. I mean, and PJ and I we're all super heavy collectible collectors.
Right.
I have a bunch of statues, figures, whatever. And some of the coolest stuff that PJ and I have ever found is just handmade. It's just, we found it at a con. And it's I support entirely. You're part of it. And I can tell you're passionate about it because I see it in your craftsmanship.
Right.
You spent, your Dragon Priest mask. That
Yeah.
must have taken that dude forever.
It's Artist Alley.
Right.
And what's funny is that the quality between Artist Alley and what you find what you'd find on a
Like a Walmart poster.
like a mega eBay store that
Right.
sells a bunch of this is a Bayek costume from Assassin's Creed, and it's well, that is all polyester and pleather. But if a guy makes on Etsy makes one, it's well, that's amazing.
Oh yeah,
It's
no,
just quality.
it's like when I saw an Artist Alley is another prime example, and it's almost a little harder to tell because a good artist is a good artist, whether he's passionate about his art or not. But what I really liked was I have a Mass Effect print.
Right.
It has the Reapers on it. None of the characters, none of the hype, none of the all the girls love Garrus, that fanboy stuff that will
Yeah.
sell. He didn't do that. He was no, this character is neat. I like this character. Here's a cool thing. You could walk right by it and not even realize it's Mass Effect unless you're a super fan. And that dude was yeah, it was just the coolest thing about that whole game to me, so I drew it. I bought that print immediately. It was just really good, and it showed. I think to sum up what I'm saying, when I get honest about it, it's a great way to bond. And what an awesome way to express yourself. When I was a kid, I got bullied for it. I'm so glad that now it's cool. And I don't mean socially cool. I mean, it's okay. I'm allowed to go, this is my thing, and you like it too. Let's be friends about it. Let's go create something really impressive because of our love of that. Right. Or let's let that inspire me to create something brand new that isn't a pre-existing thing, but I was inspired by that. What a cool thing. And now, Dylan, we're going to go back to you because you got to answer your own question now.
Let's see. Did you hear that?
Hear what? I thought we...
Calvin?
Yeah?
The ducks. You got all of them, right?
I thought so, but...
Guys!
No, man, that was...
Oh, no, Patrick!
They got back up! Zombie cyborg ducks!
They're eating my other eye!
Get the guns!
God, no!
Oh. We're going to be right back with Derek talking about our personal nerd history, but right now give me the shotgun! Give me that shotgun!
I'm bleeding out!